at the same instant, the light entered me. And it's very difficult to kind of relay how this works. It was as if I was suddenly an empty vessel. I was a container myself. And the light that was him begins to fill me up completely. Like you would fill up a water balloon, right? It takes that shape and it starts to expand. Well, I felt as if I was expanding. And I was expanding with the love of God. So let me tell you, as soon as I enter the light starts to enter me. I have this instant knowledge, undeniable knowledge, clear, perfect knowledge. You know that you know that you know. This is Jesus. This is God. This is the creator of everything. And there was no questioning it. I knew this to be true. On the day that my near-death experience occurred, I was uncharacteristically not feeling well. I felt like I was getting very fluish. It felt like maybe I was coming down with something. It felt very different though, and it got bad quickly. I started having difficulty being able to breathe. It was hard. It was labored. I ended up breaking out into this cold sweat, and I just felt very weak. And this pain started radiating down from my shoulder down my left arm. And I was thinking, I hadn't done anything that I hadn't pulled a muscle or something. But that might have been the case from exercise or weightlifting or whatever. And so I was just unsure, but as the day progressed, it just got worse and worse. And so I told my wife, Denise, that I was feeling so bad that I needed to turn in early. I just needed to lay down and try to rest because I just didn't have any more strength left in me. And she said, well, okay, honey, go ahead and go in there. I'll be right in. I said, well, you don't have to. She said, no, I want to. I'll be in there in a little bit. And so I went ahead and went into the bedroom and I got ready for bed and I lay down. I was just spent. And this throbbing that was from this pain that was going down my arm was just, it was this kind of, this pain that was running down my arm was just, it's starting to get stronger, and I could almost feel it like pulsing with my heartbeat. And I was laying down there just trying to be able to relax. And it was soon after that my wife Denise came in, and she got ready for bed, and she pulled in the bed beside me, and it wasn't too long, she fell right to sleep. She had this ability. I was always so envious of how she could do that. But she fell right to sleep. She had turned over onto her right side so that her back was up against me. Or should I say that her back was towards me. And I was just in a horrible state, so I couldn't seem to get to sleep. Well, what happened then is I'm sitting there, I was trying to lay on my side, but I couldn't lay on my left side because it was just really making my arm hurt. And then I couldn't lay on my right hand side because it was making it difficult to breathe more. And so I just laid back on my back, and I thought, okay, well, I gotta just really try to get some air into me. And while I'm sitting there contemplating this, and I'm trying to figure out just what happened, what is going on, all of a sudden, it felt like an elephant had just stomped right in the middle of my chest. And completely unexpected and so very strong that I just kind of came up from the bed just a little bit. And I had grasped my chest, and I was trying to be able to call out to Denise. But I couldn't. The words were the pain was so intense that I couldn't even call out. It was like it was stuck in my throat. I couldn't move either because, again, the pain was crushing. It was just so bad. And when I realized I couldn't get a word out to wake Denise, and I couldn't do anything, then the first thing that I did is I called out then to God. And I said, God, if you don't take this pain away, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is just too much for me to handle. Please take this pain away. And with that, within just a couple of seconds, then suddenly all the pain went away. And I was thinking to myself at that moment, oh wow, God was listening to me. And so I'm thinking like, I'm glad for that. So I then started to take stock. Now my eyes were closed at the time, but I was trying to take stock of my body, how everything felt. There was no pain going down my arm anymore that I could feel. And there was no pain in my chest. And I noticed actually I didn't have any of the other symptoms. I wasn't labored in my breathing. In fact, I was feeling kind of good. So much different from what I was feeling before. And I thought, it's nice. It's nice. And then I thought to open my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, I realized I wasn't in bed anymore. I was actually standing beside my bed, and I was looking down at this body that I recognized that was me. And I recognized I'm dead. And I thought to myself, and I don't look that good either, because this body that's laying on the bed still has a hand that was clutched to the chest, and this kind of this look on the face. It seemed like it was painful, but obviously dead. And I'm looking around, and the thing about it is, this is at night, but I'm able to see incredibly well. As you can see, I wear glasses. I wore glasses then. But what was interesting about it is that my vision was like superhero vision. I could take in the tiniest details, and since that's one of the things that I normally do, is I look at details. I try to notice things, and these tiny things, because they mean something to me, as part of just the way that I tend to approach things. And while I'm looking around and noticing everything, I could see, of course, that my wife was still sound asleep there. And then from behind me, I hear this voice, Wayne. And I looked around, I got like, somebody calling me? Then I hear it again, Wayne. And I recognized that it was coming from behind me. So I turned to look, and now, of course, I'm in the bedroom, and so there is a wall that's just a few feet past the edge of our bed, and there's a window, a big plate glass window that looks out onto, there was this, this street and a curb that goes out there behind where our house was. But I also noticed I could not only see through the window, I could see through the wall as well. Everything around, there was nothing that seemed to inhibit my vision at all. And another funny thought about it was, it seemed perfectly normal. It wasn't like I went like, oh, neat, I can see through things, I've got X-ray vision. No, it just seemed like it was perfectly natural. And then I did something else that was also, I thought, strange and yet perfectly natural at the same time. As I look out, I can see sitting out on this curb is this woman. And for a moment there, I thought, wait a minute. I know this person. I don't know how I knew this person. I don't know what that was, but there was just like this internal knowing that I knew who this person was. What's her name? Her name was Linda. Yeah, this is Linda. Well, I didn't even stop to think, who's Linda? I didn't recognize, as I look at it now, I still don't to this day know who this Linda was, but at that point I knew her. And I knew who she was. And I then walked out to her, walked right through the wall, walked out to the street, and there is a light, a circle of light that goes completely around her. And she's like sitting in the middle of it. It's like a spotlight is shining down from above her, and she's in this light beam. And I said, hi. And she looked at me and she said, Wayne, there's someone that wants to meet you. And I said, really? Who? And she just looks up like this. And of course, when you see somebody look up like that, I did the same thing. What's she looking at? So I started to look up. And when I looked up, I could see what appeared to be so far away. There was a pinpoint of light. I just thought it's a star. But I couldn't see anything else in the night sky except that pinpoint of light. And as I looked at that pinpoint of light, then suddenly what I can only characterize what felt like large, very large, yet unseen hands that grabbed me around my center and started to lift me up. Now, this is what it reminded me of at the same time is like when you are reaching down and you've got a small child and you pick up your small child and you hold them up and you're playing with them, that sort of thing. It was like that type of feeling. And it was warm and it felt nice. But I didn't see any hands. I didn't see anything connected with those hands, but I could feel them. And I started to be lifted up off of the street. And immediately, because I wasn't prepared for that, I reached out my hands to try to steady myself. And it seems, like kind of silly, but there was nothing, of course, to grab onto. And I'm looking like this, and I'm seeing down as Linda is going down away from me. Well, it's not that she was going down, it's that I was going up. And it was at that moment, then my focus, then my eye was captured onto my hands. And then I noticed my left hand, particularly because I'm left-handed. I guess that's the reason why I looked there first. And then I thought, oh, wow. I could see that there was this glow that was coming, I guess, from my body. I could still, the shape and everything else, my fingers, hands, and everything was still me, but I could then see this glow, this aura that was coming off of this purplish, bluish glow. And I thought, cool. And that's one of the things that I recognize is that when you die, you're the same person after death, the same personality that you were just a few minutes more previously. It's not like that suddenly you have the all knowledge, all of this kind of stuff. That it didn't happen like that. So I was just thinking like, yeah, that's cool. But then this vision that I have was able to not only pinpoint that, I could look and I could see inside this hand because it was like translucent. It wasn't solid like we see that anymore, or opaque is what I should say. You couldn't see through it as we look at it now, but then I could recognize, yeah, you almost could. And I could see the veins and everything inside my hand. There's no blood in there. It's like light is going through there. It's all of that. It's me, only a light me, for lack of a better term. And so then I noticed that, and I'm like, wow, that is really cool. And then I looked at my feet, and I can see them. I noticed that I have some type of clothes on, but I thought that seemed strange because I had shoes on my feet. But I wouldn't have had shoes on my feet because I was in bed. So I thought, that seems kind of strange too. Didn't know why that was. But it was just an observation that I made. Now, all of this, I want to tell you this too, because all of these observations, all of these things that I noticed, things that I thought, are happening in almost split seconds, parts of seconds. It's happening so fast. And of course, as I'm telling you this, it sounds like some kind of linear type of thing. This happened, this happened, this happened. But it's really all kind of happening almost simultaneously. But it's the recognition of all of these different pieces and parts that are happening together. And I'm able to separate them in my mind. I'm able to do that. I can focus on something, get all the information from that, focus on something else, get all that information from that. And so what I'm recognizing then now is that the direction that I'm going, the being picked up, and I'm going now through the cloud layers, and I can see the land masses and everything going down before me. And as I'm looking that way and I'm noticing that, I then turn my attention back up, and I'm going out into space. And while I'm out in space, what appears before me is this opening of a funnel. And so it's opened this way, and it goes in and makes this tunnel that was, I don't know, it had a pretty large circumference in comparison to me. So I mean, it wasn't real tight and confining. It had plenty of room to it. It was quite large. But it was also dark. I noticed that it was dark just like space was, yet I could differentiate and I could see the opening to this funnel within it. And I went up into the funnel. And during the course of this, it's ever increasing in speed. And as I went into this funnel, there are several different things that happened. One, I recognized that, oh my goodness, there was this cool breeze that, I mean, like if you were sitting on a tropical island and you had this cool breeze and you just felt so good. It was like that. I could feel it. But what was most interesting to me at this point is all around the edge of this tunnel were angels. And just like you would think an angel, with the wings, male, large, and they were packed. I mean, it was shoulder to shoulder and in this complete 360 degrees. All of them. And they were talking to themselves. Now, again, it's very dark, so I could barely make it out, except that my vision was able to see this, differentiate this. And they were all just chatting amongst themselves. There was this kind of excitement, and like they were a welcoming procession. I'm going through this tunnel and they're all around me and they're excited for me to be coming in. And I was trying to think, what did it remind me of? What kind of feelings and thoughts was I having there? Well, it was like a military procession, because as angels, that's what I got, is they were like military men. So in a military wedding, you've got the bride and groom. When they go through this procession of officers that are lined on both sides, and then they hold up swords and they're crossed up over the top, and the bride and the groom walk underneath that. So that would be effectively like a tunnel, and they walk through that little tunnel that the officers have made. And it's a very exciting and it's just a wonderful time for the couple, and the honor, of course, that they are experiencing from that particular procession. That's what this felt like. It felt like a procession. It felt like I was being welcomed, and they were excited to see me. Not only that they were excited for me, that they are there, that they are able to be a part of this. It was just, I was like awed by it. I think like they're excited for me. At the same time, so what is happening is I'm starting to speed up. And so this speed by this time is starting to get so fast that I recognize I'm actually going faster than the speed of light. But then the human mind in me says, wait a minute, you're not supposed to be able to do that. And so at that point, I started to become uncomfortable with that level of speed. And as soon as that discomfort, as I began to feel this discomfort, I began to slow down just a little bit, just to where I was comfortable enough with it. And then I thought, oh, that's better. And so I'm looking then again through this tunnel, and the light, that pinpoint of light that's at the other end, I can see that it opens out just like in that funnel shape that I had coming in. And I could tell that where this light was in a completely different realm. I recognized that there was like this type of barrier or separation or just an obvious difference, that you're going from one particular type of space to a completely different type of space. And at the same time, stars and everything that I can see outside the tunnel, just like you were you could see on a Star Trek episode where the lights are streaking by at just enormous speed because they're going faster than the speed of light. And but I'm turning my attention more and more towards this light, and it's beginning to grow in my field of vision because I'm getting closer and closer to the end. And then it's still looking like a star to me. And it's getting brighter as I'm getting closer. And I'm looking, and as I'm getting closer and closer and getting closer to the edge of the exit from this funnel, I burst, for lack of a better term, I just kind of burst into this realm. And I'm looking back, and I can see, the funnel. It kind of like it is the opening of the funnel is inside this realm, but that when you go down into the funnel, it goes out of that realm into where I was previously. And as I burst out, it's in this realm of light. But it's different from this light that I'm seeing in front of me. You could see that there's a difference. The light all around, and yet this star, it's tens of thousands of times brighter than our sun. But it was beautiful, and I could look without it. I didn't feel that it affected my vision at all. I was able to look at it without it hurting my eyes. And in fact, it was beautiful. Just beautiful. There was a purity to it. There was life to it. This was a living light. And I'm trying to be able to figure it out, because it is white. It's a white light, but to be able to call it white does it a disservice, because it's not a white that exists in our earthly reality. It is so much more pure, and it's a color that is just outside of our realm of experience. And the interesting thing, of course, then that means that most all of those colors are outside of our realm of experience, because white light is actually contains the entire spectrum, right? So that was I was thinking, like, wow, this is beautiful. But I'm still heading towards this light. There's a boundary to it that separates itself from the rest of the light, and you can see that. And as I get closer, I'm looking down into the center of this light, and I can make out the form of a man. And I thought, wow. It wasn't just that there's a man in the center of this light. The light was coming out of him. And as I recognize this, and his arms are outstretched, and it's just pouring out this light. Now, all I can make out is the shape and form of the man first. And by the moment of this recognition, with these arms outstretched towards me, like he was, like you would reach out to hug someone. And at that moment, I entered the light. I entered this light. And at the same instant, the light entered me. And it's very difficult to kind of relay how this works. It was as if I was suddenly an empty vessel. I was a container myself. And the light that was him begins to fill me up completely. Like you would fill up a water balloon, right? It takes that shape and it starts to expand. Well, I felt as if I was expanding. And I was expanding with the love of God. So let me tell you, as soon as I enter the light starts to enter me. I have this instant knowledge, undeniable knowledge, clear, perfect knowledge. You know that you know that you know. This is Jesus. This is God. This is the creator of everything. And there was no questioning it. I knew this to be true. This man is the way, the truth, and the life. Now, when this happened, you have to understand, I had not been a Christian except for the total length of time of 1 week. So I didn't know that this was actually a scripture that was in the Bible. Of course, I found out later. But as I'm experiencing this, that knowledge came to me, and it was unquestionably true. Now let me tell you about the love of God. We think we know what love is here on earth, but words are just inadequate to really give you the impact of what this is. When it was rapturous, it was blissful, it was joyful, it was ecstatic. If we were to combine all of those terms in the greatest experience of ecstasy and love and rapture and joy in our life here on earth, the greatest potential for that experience, and then multiply that times 1,000,000,000. And that would only be the beginning of a way to explain it, because there's just really no measuring stick with which to kind of give a true accounting of what this was. There was no end to it. This is infinite. And where you think it could have possibly have experienced the most of it, you're still just beginning. It doesn't stop. And so this love is filling me so much, and I feel like I'm expanding and expanding and expanding with it. There's a pressure to it from inside me outward. And I am just enraptured by it all, until I feel that it's just so much that I could explode from it. And the moment that I thought that, I feel this starting to relax on me. And then the moment I felt that, I said, "No, don't stop. Give me all you got." And then I heard Jesus chuckle, and he starts filling me with more and more again, until he feels that it's as much as I'm able to stand. And I'm just in awe. I'm in awe of it all. And I'm thinking, all of this about you is true. But there's so much more. And I started asking questions. Just like a little kid, when they start asking, "Dad, why is the sky blue?" Those types of things. I am asking all of this. Well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And he starts answering them. But let me tell you about this answer. The answer comes instantaneous. But the answer is like a complete volume. If you could imagine that, when we ask a question, we get a linear response, and then we can think of other things, other questions that might be related to it that might come to mind. And the whole point is to be able to gather as much information surrounding in as much detail around a particular topic or question that we have, that we then want to be able to develop what we would consider a complete answer, right? It doesn't leave anything to be asked. Well, that's what happens here, but a millionfold. So when he answers a question, it is as if he has already thought of, contemplated, or understood every possible other question that would be connected with it. And he answers it just with all 360 degrees, every possible connection, all answered at one time. You get an entire volume of information in an answer to your question, and the question is answered completely. In other words, there's nothing else left to ask about it. He has given you every part of it in that answer. And then I would ask another question, and then another question, and I'm just like, whom. I'm filled up with libraries of information. But let me tell you, so I asked just like things that you would question, because I had been searching for so long for answers. I was asking all of the questions you might ask about, the meaning of life, or what is the truth? All of these type of esoteric and philosophic questions, of course, that we have. And I got all of these answers. Let me just give you the one answer. It's Jesus. Okay, he's the answer to it all. That's ultimately the answer. However, having said that, all of these particulars and things to all of these questions, I was not allowed to come back to this life with. Why? I didn't know at the time, but there was one thing that for me was the premier, the penultimate type of thing. It's when we were discussing that everything about him is true. That means everything about him written is true. His word, the Bible, is true. And so it's not a question of whether what's written is true or not. It's our lack of understanding of its level of truth connected with it is what the issue is. And so I had said, then everything about the cross is also true. And in that moment, I was taken into that moment where he was actually on the cross. I was there. I was like in a 360 degree diorama of this experience, this time in his life where he was actually being crucified on the cross. And I'm standing there before him seeing this. I'm just stunned in disbelief. You're going to have to forgive me because this part is always the toughest part for me. Because while I'm standing there, I'm actually being able to experience his thoughts at that moment. And the one thing that just brought me to my knees is that I knew from him that if I was the only person in all of creation that ever would have said yes to him, he would have gone to that cross just for me. Just for me. My goodness. Just for me. And I thought, I knew about me. And if I was me, I don't know if I would have been willing to do anything even close to that. But then I also recognize this other truth, is that he would do that for every other person as well. For you, everyone. He went to that cross just to be able to have a personal and intimate relationship with you and me. Wow. And I wanted that. And so I asked then more and more questions. And then he chuckled again. He was amused by my asking of questions, but I was just like I had been someone who had been starving for food, and I had just suddenly been placed before a feast, and I was just able to try all of this. I want to try it all. I want to know all of this. I want all of this information. I want to know all about you. And then at that point, I recognized then that I wasn't there just with Jesus. I also recognized I was there with the Father. And although I couldn't see the form of the Father, which is the ones whose hands had picked me up, I knew that he was there beside Jesus, and I was able to hear him. I was able to interact with him, but I was not able to physically see him. And it was a him. It was obvious that the Father was a him and the Son was a him. But I also then started to recognize, wait a minute, this place that I'm in, this heavenly place, it felt like home. It felt like, when you go camping, and in this camping trip, it's always nice to be able to go on a camping trip and you go out into the wilderness and commune with nature and have campfires and to be able to just enjoy that connection there. It's always nice. But then again, after a week or so, it's always nice to come back home, to be able to sleep in your own bed, to have a nice warm shower, to get all the grime and the dirt off of you, that sort of thing. It was nice to go and have the trip, but it's so much nicer when you're home and you feel that. It's great. That's how I felt. I was home. I was back. How could I be back? I don't know, but I knew this was my home. But then something kind of stopped me. I thought, wait a minute. Can I stay here? And I was thinking this to myself, and then I vocalized it. Can I stay? And then both the Father and Jesus in unison at the same time said no. And it wasn't mean, but it was firm. And the voice, the power from the Father was earth-shatteringly powerful. I mean, it just within the core of me just shook me. It was still a loving no, but it was a firm no. And I knew at that moment that there wasn't a question, there wasn't an argument that I could make. Oh, come on, guys, let me stay. This is home. This is where I belong. No, there was none of that. I knew I had to go. And in that moment, that recognition, I started to be pulled backwards. And pulled back then out of the light. And I could see, now I'm actually going back just the way opposite that I went. So I came head first to come into the light. Now I'm going feet first to go back. And it happens all the same way. And there's this level of disappointment. I'm having to go back. But I'm watching myself go back. And as I'm going back, I see the funnel and I enter in through the funnel. And all of the angels, they're still all there, still surrounding the whole thing. And they're still just waiting there, talking amongst themselves. And you can hear the rustle of their wings and their chatter as they speak to each other. And with speed, I'm going back through. And as I come out of the end of the funnel on the other end, I'm in space. And I'm going past planets and everything else. And so then our solar system, and I see this beautiful blue marble out in space. I'd always wanted to have that kind of view, but this was beyond anything that you could, just to see this with these spiritual eyes that I have, and the beauty of the earth hanging out in space. It was just, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. And as I'm going and I'm traveling back towards it, everything else happening just like it was in reverse. I go through the cloud layers and I get through this one and I can see the whole landmass of North America, and I can then see as we're going towards the area that's Texas, and I'm going down and down and down into there as I'm getting closer, and all the way to where we are in Texas. And I can see Linda, she's still there on the curb. She's still looking up, and she's watching me as I'm coming in. Well, this time I don't come down beside her. I'm coming down actually then through the roof of the house. And just like everything else, remember that I can see everything. There's such a level of detail. So I see the shingles. I can see the grain on the shingles as I go through. I can see the rafters and the all of the lumber and everything that holds everything up. I can see the insulation, of course, that's in the attic space. And as I go through the ceiling, I can see in the old house, we used to have this acoustic ceiling treatment called popcorn. I remember, because I was at eye level with it. Even though I'm going so fast, I still have that picture perfect memory of that. And then looking down, and then I see my body still there on the bed, and I still see Denise, And like I said, I'm coming feet first. And I enter in through my chest. My feet come in through my chest. And I slammed into my body with such force that once I enter and I feel like I'm locked in, my physical body actually rebounded from the impact, from this reconnection, just from the force of it, rebounded, and I was thrown up. My body was thrown over the end of the bed out into the middle of our bedroom. And I landed with a thud on the floor. Didn't float off the side. I was thrown off the end out in the middle of the floor. And when that sounded, when that happened, that is what woke Denise up. She heard this loud thump, out in the floor, which was me. And she then wakes with a start. Well, it's dark and she can't see me. And I am suddenly back in pain again. But this pain is different. There's this huge burning in my chest. And I'm not able to quite try to speak yet. It's very difficult. And I'm trying to be able to crawl to the edge of the bed so that I can catch her attention. And I reach up with the strength that I have, and I grabbed her foot on the end of the bed. And she lets out a little, like that, and she looks over, and she said, "Wayne!" And I just forced out with all the effort that I could say is, "I just met God." And her eyes got real big, and she said, "What?" And I did it again. "I just met God." And then I just collapsed on the floor. I didn't have any more strength.